Booktube, it's Eleanor here, and today I'm in a little bit of a different position. The battery on my camera has died, so I'm using my iPad, so we shall see how this goes. But I'm going to be doing my what I read this week and what I plan to read next week video, so let's get started. I had a really good reading week and I read quite a lot of good books. I started the week with Weird Things Customers Say in Bookshops and More Weird Things Customers Say in Bookshops by Jen Campbell. I loved her bookshop book. You must have heard me talk about it by now, and these two books were no exception. I really enjoyed these. I gave them both 4 stars. They're definitely books that are meant to be read out loud and shared with other people. I read these out loud to my husband over a number of days over Christmas, and we were just giggling to ourselves about some of the awful and silly things people say in bookshops. Woman, holding a copy of Weight Watchers book in one hand and The Hunger Games in the other. Which of these dieting books would you recommend? And then just another small one that I thought was really just quite sweet and funny. Customer, I'm looking for a book called I Know Why the Care Bear Sings. In one of these books, one of the anecdotes says that a customer was turning the corner down in one of the books to come back later and finish reading it when they had time, obviously confusing bookshops with libraries. And it was from that my husband told me a story about someone he used to work with who worked in a W.H. Smith's, which is like an English sort of news agency bookshop, and a man was coming in every day and doing just that. He was reading a chapter and turning the corner down, and then coming back the next day and reading more. So what his friend did was he observed this man, he kept an eye on him, and he let him get till the last 20 pages, and then when the customer left that time, he took the book off the bookshelf and all of the other books when the man came in, and he told him they'd all been sold and they didn't know when they'd get them back in, which I thought was a really funny idea because he'll never know what happens at the end. Anyway, these are really worth the read. I love Jen Campbell's stuff, and yeah, good social books, so 4 stars for both of those. The next book I read has now gone back to the library, is Everyone Sees the Ants by A.S. King. This was my first A.S. King. I'd heard lots of very interesting things about her writing, and I was really excited to read this. It's the story of Lucky and his journey into adulthood. It involves themes of bullying, suicide and violence, so if those are triggers for you, then this might not be the book for you. Lucky is one of those boys that doesn't really know how to make his life better. He's struggling with being bullied, and he's going into some sort of dreams, and he's talking to his grandfather who was in the Vietnamese War and hadn't returned and was presumed dead but hadn't officially been confirmed dead. The book follows him and his struggles with being bullied and coming to terms with life and family relationships, and I really enjoyed it. It missed something for me to give it 5 stars. I wasn't as, wow as I've heard a lot of people, but I definitely recommend it and I enjoyed it as a read, so 4 stars for me on that one. Next came Saga Volume 4. What more can I say about this, but it's brilliant. I love it. Another 5 stars. I've loved all of these so far. I love the artwork. It's just my type of style. This one, I've heard a few people say that they weren't 100% sure on where the storyline was going and that they didn't enjoy it quite as much, but for me, I really enjoyed it, and I can see where they're coming from. I can't say anything because I don't want to spoil it in case you haven't read it, but it was still good enough for me to give 5 stars, and I'm definitely going to be continuing with this series. It's very fast become my favourite graphic novel series, so yeah, definitely this one. Right, Sam from Cold Tea and Crumbs, this one's for you. And I finally read Lips Touch by Laini Taylor, which Sam recommended, and I have heard is waiting for me to tell my thoughts on it. It's a short story collection. It's a collection of 3 short stories written by Laini Taylor, who wrote the Daughter of Smoke and Bones trilogy. The book is about sort of first kisses. Each of the stories is kind of around touching, kissing, around those sort of romantic elements. They are earthreal and seductive and contain supernatural elements. When I was reading this, the stories felt like fairy stories, and they were just so original and interesting, and they all had me hooked from the start. I enjoyed all three, but I have to say the second story, Spicy Little Curse, was definitely my favourite. I don't want to say too much about the stories because they are short stories, so anything I say is going to sort of spoil possibly your enjoyment of going into this. But I will say that the writing is typical Laini Taylor. It's so magical and full and just really gets you into that world instantly. You feel like you're there. I just devoured this. It was a really good read, and it's definitely encouraged me that short stories, perhaps I shouldn't write them off and that I should continue trying different short stories, because I really did enjoy this. So I would give this book 4 stars. And then the next book I read, I've been trying to get to for ages. I've been trying to clear off my library pile, of which I now only have one left, which is good. And that was Boy Snowbird by Helen Oyeyemi. This is often referred to as a retelling of Snow White. Don't go into it thinking that you're going to know the story. I hadn't read any of Helen Oyeyemi's books before, so I've gone into this without knowing her writing, and I was just really interested to give it a go. I've heard a few people talk about it. I think I have felt similar to a lot of people with that I enjoyed this book, but there was just certain elements that were missing for me. The story is about Boy. She's a 20-year-old girl and she runs away from home. She's escaping her abusive life, and she runs and she sets up her life in a new place. We follow her life pretty much from this point onwards. So we find out why she is. So we find out why she has run away, and then we move on with her life. It's set in 1953 in Massachusetts. In this book, mirrors do play a large part, so that again ties in with the Snow White retelling. And there is themes of boy obsessing over beauty. There are elements of racial prejudice. I enjoyed this book. It was okay, and I wanted to finish it, but it was a little confusing and slow paced for me at times, and I wasn't sure I really understood the message in the ending. So I gave this book 3 stars. It was an okay read, but I'm not sure I'm going to read any of Helen Oyeyemi's books again, but I may try, but just not going to rush into it. She's not going to be one of those authors that I pick up instantly. The next 2 books, or the last 2 books that I've read this week, are very exciting. I'm not going to go into much detail in this video because I'm going to do a dedicated review video to the 2 books, but I read finally The Winner's Curse by Marie Rutkowski, and wow, this was brilliant. 5 stars easily. I devoured this book in about 3 days, 2 days. I just couldn't put it down. And I was lucky enough to apply for a advance copy on NetGalley, which is where you can get advance copies for your Kindle. And I put in for the second book in the series, Winner's Crime, and I read that in a day. It was phenomenal. Easily as good or better as the first book. And I loved it, so that was a 5 star as well. So as I say, I'm going to do a review of both of these books in more detail. That'll be up on Wednesday hopefully, so look out for that. But I definitely recommend picking up these books if you haven't before. Next week I haven't got loads of books, but I've got a few that I'm going to pick from. I'm currently reading Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. This is both my diverse reading book for January and also a non-fiction story. It's a memoir about a girl's life growing up in Iran, so I'm interested to carry on with this. I haven't read an awful lot yet, as you can see. And then I'm also going to be continuing with Margaret Atwood in Other Worlds, which is a collection of her essays. I've only read the one so far. I haven't got around to reading the next one yet, but I want to get this done because this is my final library book, which I want to get back to the library. And then the next book, which is the third book in Morgan Rhodes' Falling Kingdom series, which is Gathering Darkness. So I really want to get to this because I don't want to get spoiled about anything, and people have started to read it, and so I'm excited to read this and continue the story because I'm thoroughly enjoying this series. And then finally, another book that I want to get to this week is Firefight by Brandon Sanderson. If you watched my last video, or one of my last videos, you'll know that I won this on Goodreads First Reads, and so I really want to get to this and give you my thoughts and let you know what I think about this, because I am very excited to continue this series. So those are the books that I've read, what I'm thinking of reading next week. What are you reading? What are you thinking of reading? Have you read any of these? Let me know your thoughts as always, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Okay, bye for now, BookTube.